Welcome to a special episode of the Storage Wins podcast, where we're actually filming this not only in front of the Storage Wins community, but we're at a special retreat location in Key Largo, Florida, where I have the opportunity to sit down with some of my favorite people, storage winners, where I'm going to talk to them about their journey in self-storage. Why did they choose this asset class? What drew them to the Storage Wins community? And then we're actually going to talk about a deal that they went under contract, they went out, performed due diligence, and decided not to move forward on the deal. And it's been said that some of the best deals you do are the ones you don't do. So we're going to get into the juicy details. What do they love about partnering with each other? What do they maybe not like about partnering with each other? What are some of the errors that people make when it comes to partnering? I often find people partner for the wrong reasons. So I think this will be a really valuable conversation for you if you're thinking about doing your first self-storage facility, if you're thinking about partnering with somebody. And so with that being said, I want to welcome Casey, Reid, Kay Porfilio, and Ramon Rivas. Welcome to the podcast.
It's awesome having you guys.
Thank you.
So here's where I'd love to start. What drew you to self-storage as an asset class? And then what drew you to the Storage Wins community in particular?
So I can start if you guys don't mind. I known you, Alex, for probably over 20 years now. And we met through real estate back when we were both doing residential wholesales and that kind of deal. And then my life took a turn, and I now have a full-time corporate job, which I could say pays very well. But I always go back to real estate as the asset class that I want to use for my retirement and for freedom, really for financial freedom. So it was not a surprise when you reached out to me and told me about the group that you were creating, that I was 100% on board, because I've been wanting to go back into real estate, more specifically into commercial. I was kind of thinking doing multifamily investments. But I really like the way that storage is simpler in many different ways, and it has an easier entry point as well than multifamily. So that's why I decided to join the group and why I'm here.
I love it. Casey, Kate, how about you guys?
Yeah, well, I've always loved real estate, and I've done single family home rentals as well as wholesaling. But one of my goals was to find something where you actually did have passive income, where there was financial freedom. And with everything that I've tried, it always was a lot of marketing and sales involved. And funnily enough, my husband and I would drive by self-storage units and just like jokingly say we should have one of those someday. Yeah. And it was actually through wholesaling that I heard about Alex. It was through a podcast that he had on a software that was being presented. And I was just really impressed with just the values that he talked about, and the asset class sounded really interesting to me. And that's really kind of what drew me to this group initially. And then, I joined, and it's just been wonderful since then.
I love it. Checks in the mail, by the way. So thank you.
Yeah, right. You're welcome. You're welcome.
How about you, brother?
So for me, my wife and I have worked in manufactured housing for several years, and she was a project manager for a while. And I remember one time that we got a call at 2:00 in the morning where one of the communities had a gas leak, and she had to find a contractor at 2 a.m. to go turn off 150 gas meters. And that was like, well, I don't know if I want to deal with this. And we had been kicking around the idea of what of our own business we want to get into, whether multifamily, short-term or long-term rental, car washes, laundromats, MH, storage. And one day we sat down and just came up with a list of what are our values, and then took all of the ideas that we've had and filtered it through that value set. And at the end, storage was the only one left on the table. It's just minimal amount of employees. There's a minimal amount of things that can go wrong. If you have a tenant that's not paying, you don't have housing laws and things that make it harder to get them out of your facility. And so that was the direction. And there's a few things in my life that I've been exceptional at, and I've always had coaches to help me along that path. And so I knew, I was like, I really need to find a coach to help me in this journey, because I don't want to have to figure this out on my own. Yeah. So I started praying about it. I started listening to podcasts, looking around, and I think I came across a podcast that you were on, maybe you or your Steve Cavanaugh, your business partner. And basically through that avenue reached out and was able to get a hold of Alex. We hopped on a call, and it just felt like such a natural fit that my wife and I decided that we wanted to join the community, and it's been almost 2 years now, and it's been great. And I mean, I've met some of my closest friends and people that I feel like I could really see myself doing business with for a long time.
I love it. I think what's really cool about what you shared, Casey, is how you filtered it through your values. Oftentimes, like, there's so many business opportunities that we can jump into, and everything looks like an opportunity if you don't have a vision. And the fact that you filtered it through the vision led you to storage, I think is pretty awesome.
Well, we really had to too, because I mean, we had been kicking around ideas for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years.
And you did nothing, by the way, during that 2-3 years.
We didn't do anything on it. And it was, I mean, it was similar to before I met my wife. I was talking to a friend of mine, and it was like, one day I want to be living in Dallas and deep in community. And then the next day I want to be a vagabond living in a bus and just traveling all over the country. And he was like, your problem is that you're trying to make your decision based off of feelings, which change day to day. So you need to define what your values are and make your decisions based off of that. And so when I realized, we're doing the same thing with business, we need to figure out the values. And then it was crystal clear.
Mic drop moment, and we're like 5 minutes into this thing,
Right?
so I love it. There's so many benefits to partnering with the right people in the right situation. And then we've all heard the horror stories. A lot of partnerships end in failure. How were you guys drawn to each other? And by the way, there's a fourth partner who wasn't able to be here in Key Largo at the retreat. How did you guys initially connect, and what made you decide, hey, it makes sense to combine our efforts and pursue this because we have the same goals, we have similar core values? Talk to me about the genesis of you guys getting together as partners.
I think it was about maybe a year and a half where I was struggling with my corporate job, not giving me the time that I needed to be able to dive into the whole process that you teach us as the Storage Wins community. And then you gave me a task, you gave me a book, and you said, maybe you need to read this book. And it's Who, Not What.
Who, not how.
Not how, sorry. I always forget that name. So Who, Not How. And I read, I think I listened to the book in less than a week. And then we started having conversations about how I could find somebody within the community that would complement, what the system that I had already in place, but that had the time as well. And so that's when you mentioned that Kate was open to doing something. I reached out to Kate, and she was awesome from the get-go. So I started working with her. She basically took over everything that I have been working on, and started talking to sellers and whatnot. And then when underwriting came, then both of us worked on the deals, and that worked, but it was kind of slow. And then a few months into it, Kate learned about Casey and the system that he had, and how the VA that Casey had in place was getting much better results than we were. And we decided to ask him if he wanted to basically join forces with us. And then we all agreed that we would do that. And then less than a week later, Dan reached out to you, Casey, right? Mm-hmm. And we said, why not? Let's do it.
There's a lot of people, not just here at the retreat, but people watching at home, listening to the podcast or on YouTube, that are thinking, how do I make a decision? First of all, how do I find the right partner? And then there's a distinction between partnering with somebody in business and joint venturing on a deal by deal basis. How did you guys filter through, hey, should we go into business and basically get married? Or do we just want to take this on a deal by deal basis? Like, what are some of the pros and cons that you guys discussed?
Frankly, part of it we haven't fully, which is why, like, right now we've been kind of going through a season of reevaluating what we're doing and restructuring some things. I know for me, when I initially joined the community, I had a lot more time on my hands, so I was expecting to be able to invest more time week over week on storage work. And my day job picked up, and I found it hard to really be committed. And there got to be a point where I'd been in the community for, close to a year and a half. Mm-hmm. Wasn't really cold calling, wasn't really seeing much traction. And so I went, okay, I've got to get moving. Acquired a list of facilities and hired a VA to start cold calling for me. And then all of a sudden, it's like I go from no interested sellers to, hey, I've got 5 owners that are open to selling and want to talk to you. And I'm going, okay, great, but I still don't have a lot of time. So I'm having a hard time now keeping up with this, and I'm paying a VA to do this work. Yeah. And I knew that Kate had been working with Ramon and some other people, and you have a list in the community that's basically of all the members. And it's like, okay, this person has time, this person has money, this person has talents and resources. And so I kind of went and looked through that, and I was like, okay, well, Kate says she has time. I have the money to pay for the VA and the systems. I have the knowledge of systems and processes. Let me see if she wants to join up on this. And so we started partnering in that to where my VA would set appointments with Kate, and she would take the call to talk with the owners. And there actually came to be a point where there was a facility that came up that was interested in selling. And Kate comes to me and goes, hey, so Ramon and I actually talked to this facility a couple of months ago. This is kind of what happened. And I think it would just be worth having a conversation of, I'm open to talking to them, but if we move forward, how do we handle this with the group? Mm-hmm. And it was about the same time where we realized our VA, we're both on about the same amount of hours, but mine was getting way more interest from owners. And so we're like, well,
was there something in particular that you trained your virtual assistant on that was leading to better results?
No. And in fact, I didn't even really have to train her. But one of the things that we've talked about, or that you've hit on in the community and some of the ambassadors, was certain ways to basically vet the talent and the people that you're hiring. Right. And I had been on a VA platform, and I put out a job listing, and deep in the job description, I said, send me a video that talks about your relevant job experience specifically to what I'm looking for. And somewhere in the video say, I'm here to help your storage wins. And I had probably 20 or 30 applicants, and she was the only person that did it. And in fact, I think the platform is set up in a way to where it's like they have a cover video that's a generic one that kind of goes out to everybody. And so I had even started messaging some people back and saying, things look good, but I had some specifics in here that you didn't hit. And so this is why I've disqualified you from being hired. And I had some of them going, well, I saw that, but there was no way for me to do that.
Wrong person.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, she messaged me and said, hey, can I have your email address so that I can send you the video you asked me for? So she sent me that, and I was like, okay, well, she found a way when nobody else was willing to.
She was resourceful.
Yeah. And then she came in, and I just had a real basic script. And the first day before she started work, she sent me an email and was like, hey, I took the script that you gave me, and I went ahead upon myself to think of some other questions that might come up and build out some canned responses for this to be able to see these things ahead of time.
Okay, got it. Yep. Kate, let me bring you into the conversation. What were some of your initial concerns with partnering with not one person, not two people, but three people? And how do you decide, how do we split this pie up? Like, how's this going to work? Like, I have particular strengths and resources, they do. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, well, we definitely had a conversation about that. And a lot of it revolved around who had time, who had resources, and also what our individual skills and talents were, and what we would have the most strengths. And so we basically divided it up into different sections based on that. For example, acquisitions or underwriting or operations with Casey, and actually pulling deals together and things like that. So we're still refining that process, but that's kind of the initial conversation that we had. Is like, how are we going to actually structure this? And really the biggest concerns are just to make sure that there aren't any bottlenecks in the process, because we know that speed is like really critical in this whole, in what we're doing. And so those are some of the challenges that we've had, I think, in particular. But overall, it was just, having those conversations up front and determining who's going to do what.
We talked about this at the retreat, that you have to be willing to have the awkward and uncomfortable conversation before you get into the partnership, so you can avoid the uncomfortable conversation on the back end when things like fall apart. I want to transition to the actual deal, because you guys, the four of you, got a facility under contract. Tell me what drew you to that opportunity. How big was the facility? What did the numbers look like? And what was it that initially, called your attention? Like, hey, there's something here.
It was a facility that we got from a wholesale list, and it looked very enticing at the beginning just by doing mere math. The price per square foot was very, very enticing for us. It was in a location that was very good for us as well, close to Casey. And so we decided to start finding out more information. We contacted the wholesale company that had the property listed for sale. They were great with providing all of the information and the details that they had gathered at that point from the owner. And we went into underwriting, and the numbers on paper seemed fine. There were some red flags from the get-go, and we noted those red flags, and it was something that we wanted to understand better. One of them was the competition in the market. It was kind of high, and so we had the opportunity where Casey was going to be in the area to do some work for his job, and he was able to drive by the property.
Okay.
And we decided, well, it's at least good enough where we can go under contract.
What did you guys go under contract? What was the asking price, and what did you go under contract for?
So the asking was low 400s,
Okay.
and we ended up going under contract in the mid 300s.
Okay, got
So which basically in our eyes was even better price per square foot.
Yeah.
And so we were very excited. When under contract, there was some back and forth between reviewing the assignment agreement and the purchase and sale agreement, but we ended up signing, sent the earnest money deposit, and I want to say about a week later, I flew into Dallas, and Casey was waiting for me. He picked me up from the airport, and we went straight to the property and spent 2 days doing the physical inspections and due diligence.
You were going to mention something? I felt like you're sitting on a spring
Yeah,
here.
well, you'd mentioned like what was it that enticed us and all of that. But also we looked at it and we went, okay, occupancy is at something like 40%. The rates are about half of the market.
Okay.
And at first glance, it seemed like it didn't really need much CapEx, and that there had been some CapEx that had been done recently that we would typically look at during inspections as a kind of a big major thing of like, if these few things need work, it could be a major deal breaker. But it looked like those things had been taken care of.
Did you ask the broker about those things?
Yes, and they had some validation for some of this stuff. And so we went into it thinking, okay, everything looks really good. And then it wasn't until we actually got in the market, in the facility, and started digging that we started to uncover the full story.
Right. There's only so much you can do online. I think you can do a lot of the heavy lifting online, but sometimes when you get boots on the ground and you actually see the asset is when you really start to understand like what you're dealing with. I'm curious, where there's a lot of people that haven't pulled the trigger and got under contract because they're fearful of the due diligence process and getting the funding and the financing. Did you guys have any of those similar fears, concerns? Was there uncertainty in terms of just getting it under contract and then starting that process?
We had some uncertainty about raising the money that we needed to. There was an aspect of seller financing to the deal, but we needed to come up with about, what was it, about 20%?
Yeah.
So yes, there was the uncertainty. As soon as we got it under contract, Casey started very aggressively looking for investors that would be interested in working with us. And it was something that we were doing in parallel as we were doing the physical inspections as well.
Okay, got it. How were you guys, you just mentioned that you were bringing on investors and you needed 20% down. Did you guys have that lined up? I feel like the funding of storage deals is one of the things that really holds people back, right? That it's a big hurdle for people to overcome. And we've talked about this here at the retreat, that when you find the right opportunity and when you've planted seeds and you've started to build relationships, more times than not, the funding will be there, especially if you have the right deal. Is that something that you were cultivating those relationships leading up to it? Or was there an element of like, are we going to be able to get the funding we need to take this deal down?
I think it's the latter, right?
The latter?
We could have done more ahead of time to line up, the finances.
Like what, Kate, what would you guys have done from a funding perspective?
Well, I think if we had started earlier, just developing those relationships, and kind of connecting with more people, we would have had more available to connect with when we needed to.
Yeah.
So we kind of were a little bit behind the 8 ball, but not enough to make us not move forward with the deal, because we felt confident that if the numbers work,
Yeah.
we can attract somebody, because, of course, we're part of this community who also is connected to a larger community,
Right.
that we could get to where we need to go.
Okay, got it. So you pick up Ramon at the airport, or did you pick him up?
No, he picked me up.
He picked you up.
Yeah.
You guys get to the facility the first time. Is it one of those things where like your gut, like you're like, okay, this is not what I thought it was? Or did you have to peel back the layers of the onion to uncover, hey, there's a black cloud over this thing. It doesn't look as enticing as what we thought it would be.
It was more of the latter, was kind of pulling back layer by layer. And because, as he mentioned, I had driven by the facility a couple of weeks ahead of time and drove around the city and checked things out. And I'm going, okay, I see a lot of new, like, big chains coming in here. And if these big companies are investing money to build in this area, that means that they see growth coming because they do their research. There's a Starbucks, there's a Chick-fil-A, there's an Academy, there's all of these different things. And you could just see where I go into the downtown area and they're ripping up the roads in downtown and redoing the infrastructure. And one of the telltale signs of growth and development is the infrastructure and things under the road gets done first. So I'm going, I see that. That tells me that this area is poised for at least some sort of growth, which one of the red flags we had was a really high square foot per capita. It was like 33 square feet.
Sorry, let me interrupt you for a second. Explain square foot per capita, like in layman's terms.
Yeah.
What does that
Okay.
mean?
So it's basically you take the population and you take the amount of square footage, and it's basically like how many square feet of storage is there per person that lives in this area. Exactly. So from what we've talked about, typically 8 square foot per capita, 7, 8.
It's like the national average, more or less, depending on the market.
Yeah, and maybe you go a little bit higher. Well, this was like 4 times that. And so that was a huge red flag. But then also, if it's by a lake, if it's a tourist destination, maybe there's times where that's justified because there's a lot of people that keep stuff there. And so that's why it was really important, we felt, to be able to get in there and to talk to people and go, okay, what is actually the story happening here? And is this a viable business model for us?
Yeah. Kate, you remember on your first deal, you and I had a conversation about when you start talking to the locals, the competition, the bankers, the other businesses, like you pick up so much information that otherwise would be difficult to pick up. I'm obviously not suggesting you just go hop on a flight and do due diligence on it, but I think there's something to be said for knowing that when you go under contract, you're going to uncover things that you otherwise probably wouldn't have known. And I think it's super important that people understand just because you're under contract, don't fit a circle into a square or vice versa, right? Was there an internal battle, I suppose, between, hey, we've done so much work, we've put time and energy, we're under contract, we're here. Was there a part of you that wanted to push through and do this deal even though there were red flags? Or were you like, this is a relief, this is not what I thought it was, it's easy to pull out of this thing?
So I think that for me, the way that...
By the way, I feel like there's a little bit of conflict here. Not conflict, there's a difference of opinions, which could be fine.
So yeah, so for me, it was actually a great experience. It was a great learning experience. You go from underwriting a property on paper to really looking at it. And then the other added benefit that I saw there was not having to do that by myself. Because Casey had a completely different perspective about why we needed to back out from the deal than I did. And that is great, because then basically we had two reasons to not move on with the deal and not push it forward just because we've done this or we spend this much money. We saw it as a learning opportunity and an investment in our learning. Also, we got to see a lot of things that were super cool. The first thing we did when we got to the town was go to the police station, and we spoke to the officer that came up front. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's the one that is in front of the shop. I take my car there every single week. Yeah, that neighborhood is kind of tricky, but that street where you're at, no problems. I've never had a call there. It's all good." So he gave us an opinion, a good, very good piece of information. But then I think, was it him that mentioned, I think the one thing that we're struggling with here is housing. And then we kept going around and asking
Meaning
people.
there's not enough housing in the
There's
area?
not enough housing. There's a constraining housing and whatnot. We kept going around the town and hearing the same thing over and over and over again. So we went by the city hall?
Mm-hmm.
And we asked, hey, by any chance, can you give us a listing of the new construction permits that you have for housing? And she couldn't come up with anything.
And that's something that there's a tool that we use inside of Storage Wins called Tract IQ, as you guys know, that will tell you what's called the housing starts.
Correct.
And I love to look at markets where the renter ratio, renter to homeowner, the higher, the better.
Correct.
For storage.
Correct.
Kate, I want to go to you for a second. You laughed when I asked the question about was there an internal battle between hey, let's do this, let's push forward versus there's too many red flags. I feel like Ramon was and Casey was yeah, and you were laughing, what's the...
Because I think with any deal, you go through a process and it doesn't all happen at once. So when we heard that, there wasn't much crime, it's yay. And then you hear that, there's no development. Oh, and then so you kind of go up and down in that whole process. But at the end of the day, when you realize that the deal just doesn't work, it is the combination of the lessons learned that you are thankful for, and also thankful. It's better to walk away from a deal than to get into a bad deal. So there's just we're very thankful that we went through that due diligence to come up with the ability to make an intelligent decision on moving forward. So.
We talked at this retreat yesterday about some people here will make an offer and they're kind of secretly hoping that it doesn't get accepted, because if it does get accepted, it now gets real. Was there a part of this that was I kind of hope this thing is a dog with fleas and I'm I want to get out of this thing? Or were you anxiously and you were excited about the prospect of moving forward here?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I've been in the community almost 2 years. Haven't gotten a facility yet. And this is my first time going under contract, getting an LOI accepted really. And so, I want to get the deal done. Yeah. That's the whole reason I'm here. Right.
Exactly.
And so, there's just a lot of different emotions and feelings. And even when Ramon and I were out on site, we go back and forth and we're oh man, I don't know about this. And then a couple hours later, we're oh, actually, this actually, okay. I think I could see this kind of.
Were you trying to talk yourself into the deal?
Yeah.
There was an element of that because you're excited, you want to get it done. Mm-hmm. But then we had multiple inspectors come out. And so we would have 2 or 3 inspectors of the same trade come and look at things to get multiple eyes on it.
Yeah, smart.
And so, one inspector comes and is yeah, the structural integrity of this looks great. There's a few different things I would fix and do this here and here. Yeah, it'll probably be $1,000, $1,500. I'm okay, I can take care of that CapEx. That's not a big deal. So then we're okay, well, this kind of looks good. And then we go and talk to people about the housing and they go, well, all the big housing developers have been working 45 minutes north of here, but those projects are starting to wrap up and they're starting to kind of come down this direction and do things. And there's this new apartment complex over here and there's an Atwood that's just being built over here. And so you're going, okay, it seems like maybe there's some housing stuff kind of.
Every time you got some pros, you saw some cons.
Yeah. So okay. Well, then the next day comes and another inspector from the same trade comes out and goes, man, the structural integrity of this is shot. And it actually looks like that the CapEx they did a few years ago kind of just covered up a problem and they didn't actually address the problem. And so we're actually not going to do repairs here. If we're going to do it, we have to redo all of this and it's going to be $80,000 or $100,000 or something like that.
Which totally throws off the deal.
Completely throws it off.
100%.
And then even with the housing, we're talking to people and going the consistent thing we heard was there's not enough housing. And because I've worked in manufactured housing and I'm familiar with the process, I'm going, if there's nothing happening right now, it's going to be years from zoning to platting to the whole process. So if we need to come in and we're trying to stabilize this in 3 years, they're not even going to start breaking ground in 3 years. Yeah. So then Ramon and I had to sit down at the facility where we pulled out a sheet of paper and went pros, cons.
Did you really an actual pros and cons process?
Well, because it goes back to the feelings and values thing where we're vacillating back and forth because we're trying to go off of feelings. And so I go, hey man, we got to get out of our head and our feelings.
Super smart.
What is the hard data saying? And we make our decision based off of that.
Smart.
Yes.
Think about the money lost, the heartache, the stress that would have come from doing the wrong deal. We always talk about like, let's buy the first facility, but it's got to be the right facility, obviously. Did you go back and want to renegotiate the deal, or was it just like, hey, this doesn't fit what we want,
No,
even if we got it significantly less?
So at the end of the day, so Casey and I battle with this, like Casey said, it was a roller coaster. In the morning, it was, yes, we're getting this deal, it's great. In the afternoon, well, not so much. The next day, we were definitely no, this is not a deal. We called Kate and Dan, we told them our findings, and we all agreed, listen, this is not the deal. The reasons were different. For me, the biggest reason was the market. There was that much competition, and when we started learning, small towns are great because everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh yeah, that's the one that's owned by the doctor, and that's the one. Everybody knows those owners. They're local, right? And so the facilities that competed with ours were larger for the most part, and some of them had a better product in the sense that they had climate control and whatnot. But also this facility was kind of tucked inside a neighborhood that didn't have very much traffic, when a lot of the other ones were right on the ring of the city where everything happens. And so that was my reason for backing out. Then Casey, with the construction experience that he has, it brought also the CapEx concern. And so we decided to go back to the wholesaler. And immediately we did it as soon as we made this decision, so that he didn't have to waste any more time. We told them that we were going to respectfully back out of the deal. He gave us the opportunity to provide him with a counter, and we thank him for that. But we said no, because it's really not going to make a difference. So we'd rather have you go and continue marketing the deal to somebody else that might be a fit for.
Good for you guys for sticking to your guns. It would have been easy to be like, hey, we've done all this work, we've gotten to this point, let's just push forward. So last question for you before we wrap this. Has this given you more confidence moving forward? And what piece of advice would you share with people that are looking and pursuing self-storage and are just unsure about the process, right? You guys stepped into the unknown. I know, Kate, you already own a facility. Casey and Ramon, this would have been your first, and you guys were the one that did the on-site due diligence. Has this given you more confidence? And then what advice would you give people that want to get into this business but just don't know where to start?
So I want to say yes, absolutely. You get a lot more confidence once you are on site and start looking at it and start learning what to do. Because when I did my first, this was my second inspection, but when I did my first inspection, I was completely lost. Thankfully, I had Kate that had already purchased a facility guiding me through it. And she was like, take pictures of everything, take videos, I open every door.
Yeah, we were on the
and I
phone.
was able to do everything over the phone with her. But just speaking to the sellers as well, speaking to people in the town, gives you the confidence that you are making the right decision, whether it is to move forward or to back out from the deal. I know as a small business owner, because this is a business, I know that every penny that you put into it hurts, because you might not recoup it, but it's part of I see it as part of the learning experience. We were able to basically keep it as low expense as possible. Like I said, Casey did all the driving. I stayed at Casey's house. We ate at his house. So we really, our expense was gas,
Time.
But
it was a learning experience. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
So it was a really important learning experience for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. I think it's pretty cool that you always hear the success story. Hey, we closed on this facility. This was still a success story. You didn't close on the facility, and that's a good thing. So I'm grateful for you guys for being a part of the community. This is pretty cool because we're in front of about, 15, 16, 17 people inside the Storage Wins community. Our first retreat, and I think it's safe to say it was a pretty big success. So
Very much.
Looking forward to watching you guys grow, watching them grow, and congratulations, man.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, guys, we will wrap. That's it. I'm tired. Cue cards. I love it.